I almost thought that I am the chief guest after my introduction. It was so long, but thank you so much. And there is a very famous, story that makes round on internet and otherwise also, that there are two Gujaratis who are leading the nation. You might be knowing the names, Narendra Modi ji and Amit Shah ji. So there are two industrialists who have made a exemplary mark on Indian industry. Two Gujaratis again, Mr. Ambani and Mr. Adani. And there are two Gujaratis who have transformed the Indian IT industry. One is Mr. Devang Mehta, and the other one is Mr. Harish Mehta, who is sitting next to us. So he is the one who was the catalyst to drive the Indian IT transformation to make it a 225 billion industry, as on date, sir? Or is it?
242 or something.
$242 billion industry. And, when we were having the discussion, he said that the ambition is to become a $500 billion industry very soon. So hearty welcome, Mr. Mehta, to GITAM, and thanks for accepting our invite to come to GITAM. So we have a mix of academia and industry audience here. We exempted students from this talk, but I am very sure that your next visit we will involve them also. So to begin with, I think the audience will benefit more from knowing your journey from being an engineer to an entrepreneur and then an author. And it looks very intriguing, and I think you should talk a little about your journey and tell us how did all this happen.
First of all, thank you, and thank Som for inviting me to come and share my views. You said little of my personal journey. It's a long journey. But anyway, and I have a habit looking at the audience, keep going. So please stop me without any...
No, the day is yours, so we would like to listen to you.
So to talk about my journey, I did my engineering from Pune, went to USA to do electrical engineering at Brooklyn Poly. My roommate was another Indian, and he said, "Are you mad?" Listen, I'm going back to 69. And now the computer ka jamana aa raha hai, why are you doing electrical engineering? No one to guide me whether to switch or not to switch, but I switched. After doing computer science within a year, my master's, I'd look for a job, couldn't find a job, especially in the hardware design. That was my area of expertise. So finally, I ended up joining Travelers Insurance Company as a COBOL programmer. Now, in those days, many of you would know the COBOL language. There was a saying that you can teach a monkey with 7 days training to write a program in COBOL. Partly it is coming back to prompt engineering and generative AI. But it was an English type language, very easy to do it. And here you had a computer science, so-called graduate, doing application programming in COBOL. But luckily for me, the management saw that I got other skills to really contribute, and they moved me to become a database manager. And in those days, database manager was the highest level in terms of competence required at that point in time. And for a number of reasons, which I talked about in the book also, we decided to come back to India, to stay with the family. That was the main reason for us to come back. Now, when I came back, I thought I'd join my dad's business, who was in film distribution, but realized he was in big debt. Then I said, let me talk to my father-in-law. So he said, you give me supply. They used to make, and they still make two-wheeler parts. You make this zinc nipple, and I'll buy you 100% production from you. So he took me to a place called Kanjor Marg in Mumbai. And when I saw those galas, I was shocked. The labor conditions were pathetic. The whole environment was pathetic. I said, I have not come back to India to be and work in such an environment. And so at that time, I decided to enter. I was just wondering what to do. Then my cousin said, Harish, you go back to, take the next flight back to USA. That's the land of paradise. It was then, and still today also people say, honey, money and whatnot. This is not a country for you. Here you do not know whether your competitor is doing customs chori, income tax chori, excise chori. I said, when you do not know the input cost of your competitor's product, how are you going to compete? It made sense to me what he was saying. Then I met Sharu Rangnekar, was leading management consultant in those days. In a similar small meeting like this, he said, welcome, Mr. Mehta. Here you will be a first-class citizen in a second-class country and a third-class administration. And yours and my job is to fix it. It was very motivating from that perspective. So then I realized if I enter technology business, because in technology business, you can't bribe a jump instruction. So it has to, you have to deliver your solution. So chances of all other reasons probably would not be applicable to the tech business. That's how I entered technology business. And was a database manager before, where I was paid X dollars. I could do, I realized, sitting in a cubicle in India, exactly same work, and get paid 15 times less. The labor arbitrage benefit was so apparent in early 80s that this is a good business to be in. All I needed was a pipe from my office in Mumbai to a traveler's insurance company, their data center, have access to those IBM mainframes and IBM databases and IBM applications. I can do sitting here. So that took me to the software business. Now, within the software business, again, we, as anybody entrepreneur would do, entered the product game. And we failed miserably. And there are a number of reasons India was just not ready for the product game in terms of variety of number of areas, from product architectural skills, product engineering skills, testing skills. Nothing was there. Forget about the monetization. There were all kinds of issues from Reserve Bank to other authorities to even go out of India and sell the product. There was no market in India anyway. But we realized India is not ready for product game. So we entered the services business. Now in those days, the technology gatekeepers of India were scientists, educationists. And they all wanted us to do software product game, not software services. They would say tech services. It was like a TV technician coming to home, maintaining and going back. Low-end work. We were even branded as cyber coolies, techno coolies in those days, washing the diapers of Fortune 2000 companies. So this business was just not considered as a respectable business for India to get into. But some of us believed that's where the market potential is, because as per some report, the total outsourcing market in those days was, say, $300 billion. And we were doing 10, 20 million. But we realized these hundreds of regulations. So again, in those days, the rules of hardware or the physical things were applied to intangible software. And there are a number of stories. Like bureaucrats didn't know what is software. Forget about the product. Services was just not even their radar to think. Just tell you some small story here that they put excise duty or GST on project development work. Now, how do you pay excise duty on a quarterly basis when the project is under development? So we realized, and we studied the excise laws and all stuff. We went back to the one Mr. Reddy, who was a junior secretary, and we argued with him, saying, listen, project development cannot have excise duty. Because first of all, customer is not going to pay me till I deliver the final product. And plus it is a project work, which is a continuous work, and excise is meant for products. So we challenged him, and he says, you young people, don't challenge me on where I can put excise duty or not. The air you are breathing in, I can put excise duty on that also. So that was the arrogance, that was the bureaucracy that we were working with. But he said, yes, you want zero duty, I'll make it zero duty for you. Now, we realized after a few years, he didn't make it nil, because if he had made it nil, then he loses control over bringing the duty back. If it is zero, it was under his control to impose the duty whenever he wants. For nil, there was a big committee higher up to approve it. So he was very smartly, so that was the kind of environment we were living with. Like, what is software? When we used to export our, there was no link, So we used to export our software through floppy drive, dump it on it, and then send it to the customer. Now the customs officer would ask, where is the software? Show me. Now what do you show him? Print 10,000 pages of data? Is that what is? So we explained to him. He said, no, I have to have a sample with me. You cannot export without the sample given to me. I will not give there some GR, some certificate for it to go out of India. Finally, we gave him the floppy. You know what he did? First thing, he was stapled the floppy over his paper. Losing the entire evidence that was there. So that was the knowledge of the software. Like when we would go to abroad, let's say, for a marketing trip. You go from Bombay to London to New York and back. And for some reason, your prospect says, I'm not available, change it. So you go to New York first, then London and back. Reserve Bank will summon you. Within 1 week, you have to come and defend yourself. Why did you go? Why did you change the itinerary? So we explained. They said, no, what is software services? They didn't understand. So they said, you have gone for marketing. Have you gone for your personal vacation? You wanted to enjoy your India's rare foreign exchange, and that's why you've gone abroad, and I will not allow, and all kinds of questions. So they look at you with suspicion, all that. So that was the kind of environment we were in. We had hundreds of regulations that were strangulating the software services business, but we could see the big pie, and that's where the idea of forming an association. And there are some other stories where I realized the power of an association in a country like India when working with the bureaucracy, and that's where we formed NASSCOM. I'll stop here right now.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for highlighting. And I think NASSCOM was the primary catalyst which drove the IT revolution in India. The barriers of entry were lowered by the government. There were many things, but still, NASSCOM played a very important role in identifying the challenges, doing policy changes. You were talking about the immigration thing, so such things, I think the credit should go to NASSCOM. But, let me ask you this. So now the world is, talking about industry, academia, collaboration, in NEP also, we were talking about collaborating with foreign universities. There is a lot of discussion about competition and collaboration working together. How did you visualize this some 30 years back, that there should be a collaboration and a healthy competition among the companies which are in the same domain? And how did the idea of NASSCOM mushroomed up?
See, when we started NASSCOM, there were about 40 companies, and we would sit together like this, similar to here. And I found that nobody was opening up. Nobody was really talking. Everyone was scared. From the perspective that they realized it's a small industry. If I talk about my problem, we all will go and compete and tell his customer, hey, he has done this, they are wrong, and whatnot, and whatnot. Or by mistake, the name slips out. Again, we'll go, all of us will, after that prospect, and so forth. So people was, also we had not learned, I would say, which we have learned today, art of, in such an environment, communicating at an aggregate level. Keep not disclosing your company details, but learn to articulate at a, let's say, industry level in that sense. But that took a couple of years before we reached that stage. So there was a major distrust among each other while we wanted to solve the problem. So that time, again, this is what happened 35 years back, so this is what my memory says, and I have a habit of writing my personal notes, so I captured it from there. I was looking for a solution, then I realized in the world, where have these competitors together solved such a problem? And I bumped on this Europe story, how Europe was united. So who brought Europe together? So there's a gentleman named Jean Monnet. He was a French economist, and he brought Europe together under one umbrella. And he has a book on the entire, how he brought Europe together. So I bought that book. And there the book says, like Germany is fiercely competing with France, but let's say manufacturing steel required something from here, something from this, and whatnot. Some common ground, and then bringing it together. And there's a quote by him which said, nothing is possible without man, but nothing will last without an institute. So if NASSCOM had to survive, we have to move in the direction of building an institute. And all these competitors have to work together to solve the problem. So that was very clear in our mind that these fierce competitors have to work together. And there are a number of things which we did, like we'll continue working at night in a friend of ours, K.V. Ramani, who had a company called Future Software, in his room, drinks will flow. So people will open up. We'll not talk about the serious business issues. We'll just at a more individual level and start building comfort factor with each other. At that time, even Dr. Prakash Hebbarkar of Tata Unisys, he called me and he says, Harish, are you running a social organization or a serious software organization? I said, but Prakash, nobody is talking in the room. So what do? We need to find ways to people to open up. And that's how partly you can say the seeds of collaboration started. I wouldn't say collaborate, they were all competitors. But ultimately, my sense is that it is the proof of the pudding would be in the real success stories. And I'll tell you a great success story which this spirit of collaborate and compete brought in. 10 years before, during the George Fernandez, I'm just putting some names, I'm looking at all of you, I'm sure you know these names, Fernandez and whatnot. He had asked multinationals to go out of India and reduce the equity to 40%. So IBM had left, Coca-Cola had left. But whatever little work we were doing with these customers, they were very happy because like masters in computer science, bachelors in engineering from IITs, working and doing low-end work in some ways, was outstanding from the customer's perspective. They're not seeing this kind of productivity, creativity coming out of this, even though at that level. So they said, we would like to set up back office operations in India, but we would like to own 100%. Would your association recommend to the government 100% ownership for MNCs to do back-end work? So when we all met again, we said, here is a proposal from the MNCs who are our customers. Would we agree? No, protectionism is the most natural instinct for any entrepreneur. Government has stopped it. Why should we now go and help open it up? And then also we are worried that they come to India, they'll pay double the salary, take away our best people. Even the work which we are doing for them under the garb of back office will shift from what we are doing it to them. So why should we allow them to come in? But by that time we had created an environment of positivity or creativity where people were trusting each other. When people were, their creative juices were flowing to solve a problem. So somebody said, yeah, but if they come, they'll bring quality processes, which we don't know. Ours were all homegrown quality processes. So we can learn a lot from them, and they have all other best practices. Plus this big pie we are saying, $300 billion, may start opening up if we start allowing them to, like ease of doing business with India as a country brand and so on and so forth. Still we were not ready to accept. At that time there was a similar argument in USA. Who is us? Is it IBM, Motorola, Whirlpool is USA, or was it Sony, or the Japanese companies USA? Because those companies had made major inroads in Japan, in USA in those days. So there is a question, who is us? So same question we asked ourselves, who is us? At that time somebody, I don't know who said that whoever develops human capital of India is us, and who doesn't is not us. Everybody loved that. And today also we use that as a major, you can say, reference point. Whenever we are not sure about the final decision, we say, will it help develop human capital of India? And we take decision in that, on that side. So everybody said, yes, these multinationals will develop human capital of India. We went around the table, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, whoever was there in the business. Do you agree? Because now we're going to the government for the final proposal. Everyone agreed at that point. Everyone was ready to compete with the best in the world. That spirit was there. And then when we went to Dr. Manmohan Singh at that time, he was the finance minister, one of the finance secretary or some junior officer, his first question was, वापस इस इंडिया की साइज जैसे तुम देश को बेचने आ गए. So they were suffering from the colonial mindset. Allowing MNCs to come in, meaning they'll come and take over the country. Somebody said, another officer, आप किसके दलाल हो? Which MNC has paid you to give this proposal? But anyway, but we were ready with our data, facts, and whatever, and they accepted. Today, that decision of where fiercely competing competitors sat together, kept India first, like human capital first. They have creative juices flowing to solve the problem in terms of going with that recommendation. Today, that GCC, that decision has given birth in India to 1,800 R&D centers. Perfect. Today, they employ 1.2 million engineers. And not only that, some of them are now, they're representing at the board level of their parent company, and they're co-creating future for their companies. So which again is a healthy competition for service providers also. If they are doing it, so that sets the whole ball rolling for the overall pie to grow. So that is the beauty of this collaborate and compete, keeping India first, creative juices flowing, single voice. A single voice is equally critical. It's not that, and then it went on. It reached to a point where China, 15 years back, wanted to compete with India. Every low-cost country in those days wanted to compete with India. We also have talent, you have talent. Ours is low cost, yours is low cost. We also know technology, you also know technology. So what is the uniqueness about you? So like Brazil wanted to rename they renamed their association as Brascom, or Pakistan Pascom, something like that. All kinds of things are happening. We can also replicate the Indian model. And so China also wanted to replicate the Indian model. And so they appointed foresters as an agency to develop the master plan for China, how they can become number one in technology services globally, because they had seen the kind of benefit that our industry brought in. John Forrester, he told us this story that he told the Chinese government, you cannot compete with India till you create NASSCOM equivalent association in your country. He said, I have not seen anywhere in the world, IBM, Accenture, Capgemini, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, all sitting around a table, solving industry problem, keeping India first, with single voice. I have just not seen anywhere in the world. So it's not easy to compete with a country which has a body which puts these pieces together and helps guide them. So that's the power of collaborate and compete, which took seeded, and still today, I'm hoping that that culture has continued at NASSCOM.
No, that's really great, Mehta Sahab. The backstory, nobody knows. The background of how it all started, who pushed this, who was pivotal in actually bringing in those reforms. Thanks for sharing, this amazing.
I can tell you some other stories here.
Sure.
Since we are talking about 90s right now, we still remain in the world of 90s for a while. Intellectual property is a big challenge in those days. When we used to meet prospects especially in USA, they would look at us as a thief. Because in India we believe in right to copy, not in copyright. Now, unfortunately, that was the brand of India. And so the minute I part with my data programs to you will go and sell it to my competition or whatever. So we realized the serious, and plus some of us had product, also there was no, why would I do innovative product if I cannot get the protection on my product? So and third was also that China had a very bad brand name from the IP perspective. And we were getting branded saying. So we realized at NASSCOM that we should strengthen our Copyright Act. Software was not there as a part of Copyright Act in those days. It was books and movies and whatnot. So we went to the bureaucrats to meet. The one bureaucrat says, Where is our Kohinoor? Last Tower of London. Where is the jewelry of this king? UK. He says, well, last 3, 4, 500 years, we have been looted by the Western world. This is our time to loot their intellectual property. We should promote piracy all out and do it. And we thought, my God, where are we? And then he said, look at us. Mahabharata, do we charge any royalty? Ramayana, do we charge any royalty? If we had charged royalty for Aryabhatta zero, we would have been a different world altogether.
True.
So why should we not do piracy? Anyway, but then luckily for us, Mr. Vittal was the, in those days, Department of Electronics Secretary. He saw what we were saying, it, why we need to build India Inc. brand as a trustworthy brand. And the Copyright Act has to be changed and modified. But he modified it to a point where if you are caught as a CEO where the pirated software is found, he wanted to put you for 1 month in jail. Well, Vittal said, no, we don't want CEO to go to jail. You just take the CEO to the police station, it's good enough for us. We just want to alert them that this is the way to do business. Very simple, rather than making it so complicated by sending the person to jail. And I think they kept 3 days or something for the CEOs to be, they didn't want to remove it completely. So the Copyright Act, which came at that time, I'm talking about 91, was more stringent than UK. 91, where we had no product business from their perspective. But that started building India Inc. as a brand. And then it continued with the 10 years later, I think, Devang, there's a whole photograph where he so-called rented an elephant in Chandni Chowk in Delhi. And he had thousands of floppies, and the elephant is crushing it, and he is sitting on the top of elephant saying, we don't believe in piracy and all that, which gave a, again, we had no money, remember, in those days. So we had to come up with low-cost solutions all across to promote India brand. And then that sort of started giving message to the market that we are serious about protecting the IP rights.
Very well said, and that reminds me of a story. In 98, I was wandering in Nehru Place in Delhi, and I understand the very next day Bill Gates was about to announce Windows 98 in a big way. And in Nehru Place, they were already selling the pirated CDs. So as you rightly said, the right to copy and copyright are two things that I think right to copy we did very well. So, and regarding the data protection, in 2015 when Europe was going through the transformation of GDPR,
right.
one of the key things was that most of the organizations were forced to adopt those regulations. And we were speaking to one of the bureaucrats about how India takes GDPR, and he said that we used to write postcards. And that postcard was read by almost everyone before it was delivered to the actual recipient. So we don't believe in data protection, etc. But I think India is now becoming very wary about all these things. And coming back to the outsourcing part that you were saying, India shares around 40% of the market share in outsourcing business. But don't you think, it is linked very closely to how the US and Western market behaves? So if there is a recession in Western market, India also slows down. When it is a boom, India also, picks up very well. So is it good for us, or is it a bad thing for India?
I wouldn't say good or bad, basically. But what we have seen over the last, say, 35 years is every 5 years, 10 years, the new technology wave comes in. And as the new wave comes, it impacts what you are doing for that particular area. Some jobs get eliminated. But the overall demand gets increased. So we have seen, like when the Java wave came, client-server wave came, internet wave came, Web 2.0 wave came, like that. Now, of course, now the generative AI is coming. And we don't, it's far more severe than, because it's both, we call it, it's a steam engine movement for India in terms of the benefits of it, and it's also a Frankenstein moment for India in a sense, the regulation has to be controlled in a very different way. So there's a challenge, but at the same time, it will open up huge opportunities. So outsource, now when these new waves come, it impacts the existing work. But when the new wave comes, the new opportunities come, in a sense, leveraging it for solving new problems. And when the recession comes, let's say, at that time, we work the other way around, in a sense, how do you do cost optimization? Because now the company is going to reduce cost. Otherwise, increase the revenue. Here's the cost implication. So if you look at the balance sheet of our customer, either we help them on the top line when the industry wave is there, when the wave is down for other reasons, there is a bottom line impact. So our industry always has been able to grow. Okay, sometimes 5% and 6%, sometimes maybe 20%. So that would vary from that perspective. But so far we have not seen the downward trend in the industry. And now, for example, now India is opening up in a massive way. So even if there's a global some issues, I'm sure many of these companies will enter the Indian market.
Great.
So there would be all various pros and cons of doing it. But overall, we see very healthy growth. And also we have seen when we started with, let's say, IT services, then we had this R&D centers came up. Then the business process outsourcing business came up. Yeah. The engineering services business came up. Today, industry has given birth to more than 90,000 startups now. So that again will continue. Now, it may not be relevant to a particular company or X, Y, and Z, but overall, it's very bullish trend for the technology industry in general.
No, great. And I think the Indian IT industry itself has changed the perception of the world. That we are also forerunners in IT and IT services. So when did you realize that we had that Eureka moment? Yes, this is when the world has realized that NASSCOM and Indian IT has actually changed the perception of the world, and India is one of the leading countries in IT.
Which
at what juncture of your life you realize that after founding NASSCOM that we have achieved enough success to call India as a IT giant?
See, there are a number of inflection points for both NASSCOM as well as the industry. See, NASSCOM started from my office, so I was lucky to sitting in the front row, sitting how NASSCOM has changed, how IT industry has changed, how India has changed. Externally, if I have to give one story here, about 20 years back, I think, 2003 or 4, I was on my way to attend TiCon. Just to tell you a story about a little bit TiCon, TI. I don't know how many of you know, do you all know about TI? Okay. So now TI is to promote entrepreneurship, basically. And Kanwal Rekhi, the famous angel investor, he was on my board in 90s in Onward Novel. And he used to always tease me saying, you're getting paid for your service, it's a sweat, not for your brain. And he will give all kinds of statistics by how Oracle versus Infosys, Oracle market cap is 5 times more than Infosys, and all various things that he will talk about. India should enter the product game, and you would say, to yahan ke dhanda kar, then you'll know what the challenges are in the product game. But when the dot-com boom came, and one of the senior person from Silicon Valley, Cesar Iyengar, when I was talking to him, he said, Harish, my landlord is now asking me for not rent, but stock options. So that's the time we realized that there's a new wave is happening around the world. India is not part of it, so we should bring TI to India. So we brought TI to promote entrepreneurship in India. And then today, of course, we have now some 32 chapters in the country, purely promoting entrepreneurship in India. And like NASSCOM focuses on skills, this will focus on the entrepreneurship. So we got very close to TI people, and then they have a big event called TiCon once in a year at Silicon Valley. So I was on my way to attend that event. So I took a taxi from San Jose to go to Hotel Fremont, where the TiCon was. And my taxi driver was one Sardar, mid-age Sardar. So we started talking. So he said, "Aap kahan se aaye?" I said, "I'm from Mumbai." "Aap kya karte ho?" I said, "I'm from software industry." He said, "Aapne hame izzat dilai hai." And I'm scratching my head, what have we done to this mid-aged Sardar, giving him pride. I said, "Kyun, Sardar ji, aap aise kyun bol rahe ho?" So he said, "Today, any American who travels my taxi, he or she thinks I am a PhD student doing part-time taxi driving." So that's probably one of the moments I realized, okay, what we did to a common man somewhere else in the world and created pride as an Indian. So that could be, I would say, similarly, when I launched my book in London 6 months back, after, at the end I was signing the book, one Indian came to me and he said, I left India 15 years back. I haven't gone back. When I left, it was very dark. There was nothing I can be proud of. All I can be proud of is what happened 2,000 years back, 3,000 years back. But listening to your story today, I am feeling proud as an Indian. So that's what the industry has done. Technical person can understand in terms of and there are some stories about it. When we started NASSCOM, as a collectively we decided we will not bribe any policy maker for any policy change. We wanted to build the trust between policy makers and us. And there are some stories behind it. If we have time, we'll talk about it. But to build trust was a very fundamental principle of NASSCOM, which is unusual in those days with any other association. So suddenly, and we say that, I think Vittal used to say that NASSCOM is like a lotus flower that grew in a dirty, muddy water, withstanding many storms. And he liked it so much, he started saying, N stands for nuts. What does NASSCOM stand for? He said, N for nuts, A for asshole, S for stupid, next S for screwball, O for oddball, M for mad. And then he would say, I am a leader of this group. Can you believe that an officer whom we would consider God, because he had every control of every small thing we wanted to import, control was with him and his team. So to us, we cannot make an enemy out of him. I can't even upset him. Because we don't want to be on the wrong side of such a powerful person. But we built our work together, built the trust with him in such a way that he felt that he is the leader of this group. So that's I would say another way we can put it, that the trustworthy moment that came when we wanted export benefit to be given to software services. There was an export benefit, but it was only for 1 year. So we said, you can't do anything with 1 year, can't do any planning. It has to be for long term. So we argued with him, so we need it for long term. So he came back saying that we can, I met Mr. Bimal Jalan, who was the finance secretary, and he said, if you do $400 million export this year, we'll extend your benefit for, the benefit will continue for many years. Now we were at 150 million, and we all sat together. We could do only 200. Now here's another story I'll tell you here, that when we started NASSCOM, one thing was very clear to us, okay, we must represent 80% of the top line of the industry. And if we are not, like say TCS or Tata Group was at that time, they had maybe 70% market share. They were not agreeing to join NASSCOM. So we would be 30%. At 30%, we are a local association with no national impact. So we delayed forming NASSCOM till Mr. Kohli said yes. And when he said yes, then we started NASSCOM, you can say. The ball started rolling for NASSCOM as an association. So when I went back to Mr. Vittal, the time I was chairing NASSCOM, I said, sir, we can't do it. He said, you don't want the benefit. No, we want the benefit. But our industry says we can't do more than 200. We cannot commit $400 million. He said, but here is your competing organization called MATE, Manufacturers Association. They have given a report, they can do it. Here is Software Export Promotion Council's report. They said they can also do it. How come you are not able to do it? When I called MATE per person, I said, on what basis you are saying you can do it? Harish, you don't know how Delhi runs. You have to put these numbers, the mumbo jumbo something, and give it to the government. They'll approve it. Where some idea was to give X money to every engineer and whatnot and whatnot. So I told Mr. Vittal, sorry, we can't do it. Then I gave a list of all the companies. So at that time, the 80% top line came in very handy. I said, Mr. These 8 customers, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, whoever was, says they can't do more than 200 million. That's the collective wisdom of this group. If they have other companies in software business who can do it, please go ahead and do that. See, realize how the difference between us and others, and that build the trust. And then he said, how many problems here? So we had some hundreds of problems. Anyway, then he started working on one by one and removing those bottlenecks for the industry.
No, that's very amazing, Mehta Sahab. And I think there was a time when there was no IT editorial or news piece without NASSCOM being a part of it. And when you and Mr. Devang Mehta was at the helm of affairs, I think Devang Mehta ji was there for almost 10 years, and he became an exceptionally big name, and he was one of the key persons who collaborated with our ex-Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu ji also in transformation of Hyderabad. They had an amazing role.
Yeah.
And very, very inspirational, I think, what you have said.
By the way, in my book, I have given credit to one politician, that is Chandrababu Naidu, by the way, who really helped our industry the way it's supposed to be supported. And other ministers came from Pramod Mahajan's, they all support, I'm not saying no, but the way Chandrababu Naidu came forward was completely, very, I would say, unusual.
We always talk that he was not a CM, he was a CEO of Andhra Pradesh.
Correct.
So,
yes.
yeah, so...
I mean, once we wanted to meet him, so we met him at his home at 6 in the morning, breakfast. He was ready to work for Andhra and IT in a big way, to change Andhra from that perspective. Yeah.
Great. Now Mehta Sahab, let's move on to the current scenario wherein ChatGPT has become a big name. Educators are scared about this really, because students can create things, cheat. There are so many things that that ChatGPT can do. But on the other side, industry is very excited also about generative AI. So, what are the challenges you foresee for industry, and what are the challenges you think academia will face? And how can we convert these challenges into our benefit?
I mean, all of you, I'm sure every one of you have used ChatGPT. Other day, my granddaughter, she is 11, and in her school, she had to do some project work, prepare a project report for mocking the United Nations representing Singapore. So she was doing a rehearsal with us. Her first statement was, Dadu, I have not used ChatGPT. And I'm amazed at the young age, how ChatGPT has entered the psyche of everyone in the world. So, and it's a real technology, it's a real stuff. Extremely powerful, as we all know. It has potential to change India like this, as in my view right now. I'm by the way, techno-optimist. I have seen India changing from a snake charmer's country 30 years back to becoming a global tech powerhouse, overcoming all kinds of struggles, challenges. And I have seen the entrepreneurial energy, the passion, or the collectiveness, how people come together and solve a problem. What sounds like most impossible problem. We have solved many such problems. So I'm in that sense, gives me huge comfort and confidence if we continuously collaborate and contribute, and our creative juices flow, we'll overcome many of the problems that the ChatGPT brings in. I'm very positive about it, but we need to still equally be vigilant about how to control the abuse of the technology.
I'm very sure audience will have some more questions regarding ChatGPT, when we open up for audience debate. And then another interesting chat, since you have brought in TIE in India, and there is a big push from the government also for startups. Like they have a separate cell called Startup India, and around 90,000 startups have been incubated at different places and working to develop the Indian economy. Although there are several challenges also associated with startups, and predominantly in the corporate governance side. And we have seen how recently Bharat Pay had issues, and there are other companies also. And I understand that you and your team were working on some framework which can help the startups to tackle the governance part. So if you can, share some insights with the audience, that will be really great, Mehtaji.
See, the government's role is many different avatars. Can be a consumer, can be a policy maker or a regulator, can be a investor. Different roles government can play. Now, my experience working with the bureaucracy is very bad. And but on the other hand, there are great supporters also, like Vittals and Singles and many other bureaucrats. They have really supported the industry extremely well. So my analysis or conclusion is that we should keep them away from doing any micromanaging the industry. You must have the umbrella support. Like when we used to have country-to-country negotiations, Government of India came in very handy. Like Satyam, there are many such stories where government can play a fantastic role. But don't allow them to come closer to us. The regulator coming in will completely screw it up, frankly, because they don't understand what business you are in, and now you walk into your office and give all kinds of threats to extract money, all kinds of things, which each one of you would have experienced in your own way. So at NASSCOM, for example, we have never ever gone to the government with a begging bowl for any benefit or any incentive. We keep them away. We don't want your incentive. Because the minute they give you incentive, there would be some monitoring mechanism behind it. Once they come closer, they find, oh, he is abusing it, he is abusing it. So they'll come up with some regulation without knowing that 98% are honest, but they're getting impacted. All kinds of. So we have seen that. So fundamental principle is keep the government away. So a week ago, when Amitabh Kant, as part of the G20 Sherpa, he has the S20, which is the Startup 20 group, met in Alibag, where 80 unicorn founders, investors, founders, policy makers, they all sat together and said, now corporate governance, as you referred, is a big challenge. India brand, like in our time also, India brand was a big challenge as a trusted nation. For example, just to give a little bit of history there also, that 30 years back versus where we are today, as far as corporate governance is concerned, IT industry was the first industry to come up with the quarterly reports and the annual reports, which were transparent, literally, and following the world-class governance standards. And once that happened, the FDI started flowing in the country, because we started, and of course supported by SEBI, RBI, with the good regulations and all, and monitoring it. So the FDI money started flowing into it, which was very positive, very healthy. Now, but startup world right now is a challenge. While going smooth so far, but there are few cases where stories have come up, like Bharat Pay, and the press and media, unknowingly, I believe, are hyping up those cases, as if the entire startup world is bad. The entire startup world has wrong numbers and fudging and whatnot and whatnot. So how do you solve that? So that was a subject we discussed last Saturday. And we agreed that self-regulation can be brought in corporate governance. Probably that can help everybody. Keep the regulators away. We'll find ways how to implement that mechanism. So we put a team of 7 together. I was one of the team members. Today we will be releasing our final draft of our that so-called self-regulating mechanism, where we have taken some 150 corporate governance rules and then broken it down into 3, I would say, maturity levels, 1, 2, and 3, which the startups below certain size, certain employees, certain should follow. When you go from 0 to scale, growth stage, then what corporate governance to follow, and then when you're on level 3, what corporate governance standards to follow. And we are hoping that the level 3, which is the top maybe 1,000 startups would probably out of 90,000 would fit into it. Those 1,000 should follow those standards. If they follow, we will build the brand. Then it becomes natural. Now, for those 1,000 startups to follow, we've given some suggestions like any investor who puts money, anyway they have their own corporate governance standards, but they insist now that you follow level 3. And then we would like to see the auditors certifying the level 3. So it's all self-regulatory, market forces taking care rather than government stepping into it. So we'll look forward to support from all of you for this mechanism, and please send us your critique, whatever, after going through it. Because we would like to strengthen that act, both in terms of, I think that is quite comprehensive the way it is. What our challenge is, how do we evangelize that? How do we incentivize startup entrepreneurs to follow?
Great. And will there be a monitoring mechanism also?
Sorry?
Will there be a monitoring mechanism also?
No monitoring.
Self-monitoring. Self-monitoring.
Self-monitoring.
Okay.
So every startup will say, I am following level 1 or level 2 or level 3. Or if I am not following, we have said, please explain why you are not following it.
Great.
We don't want anybody to monitor it. Let the monitoring be done by the board of directors. Let the monitoring be done by the auditors. Let the monitoring be done by the shareholders. But let everyone else stay out of it.
Great. I think this will be, and even governments push towards startups and even towards technology, and that's why we are here today celebrating the National Technology Day. And one of the mandates that we were working on at GITAM was to bring in industry and academia closer and help academia to enable their technologies and taking help from industry to bring problems, understand them, and take academic help to resolve them. So this is a very big nexus, and it will help in developing startups, developing academic ecosystem, and even the MSMEs will also get a lot of help. So on this day, our theme says global science and global well-being. This is a theme for the National Technology Day. And I think technology plays a very critical role in the well-being part also. So how do you see, technology being used appropriately for social well-being?
So first of all, you all will agree, technology brings abundance. So in society in general. I call also technology as I don't know how to tell you guys, because all of you know it, as a bottle lightning. And the combinations of multiple technologies will solve India's literally any problem, frankly. So that, the power is there with us in terms of, we have the talent and the skills and the entrepreneurship and the leadership or incubation, all that is up, different ways, different levels, it's also available to us. The way it will contribute is, now it's branded as, where it will help the commonest of common man is digital public infrastructure. You saw Aadhaar, you saw UPI, you saw how the COVID was handled through the dashboard. Now you will see ONDC coming up, and then many, for every business segment from healthcare, education, alternate energy, X, Y, and Z, a framework or architectural framework has been developed by non-profit, and they're the best of best architects from the industry. So they're not just, somebody becoming an architect, but somebody who has proven his architectural skills. So they have from, in the process of coming up with different architectures for all different segments. So what you're going to see is, India should not ape the Western world. The Western world is driven by automation, strictly. The labor cost is very high, so that's what their solutions are around that. That is not relevant for India at all. We have exactly the opposite. We need to create 90 million jobs over the next 10 years. Our per capita is hardly $2,500. That has to raise. So we need entrepreneurship energies to be unleashed in these areas. That's a challenge. It's not going to happen on its own. But this digital public infrastructure has allowed the poorest of poor, let's say, to have a bank account and be part of the mainstream.
Correct.
Once he or she builds the credit history, money would be available. So there are various ways that would help percolate down to the poorest of poor, the digital public infrastructure. Similarly, the whole digital infrastructure is again touching the commonest of, the poorest of poor man or non-privileged people. If you look at health tech, you look at education. Education, you will offer it. One is definitely in person, but the online can be given to the remotest part. And it is the algorithms, they're all improving dramatically for making that impact. So there are a number of ways we are saying that technology will be a level playing field in a country like India. And that's where I believe, and Digital India is the main theme around it. And of course, India emerging as a, we call it talent nation of the world, because population is aging in many, from USA to China to Europe, and these new technologies like generative AIs and whatnot would need technical skills. And they should look at a country like India to offer that. So we have opportunities for the existing industry to grow. We have opportunities for India to be digitized. And we have opportunity to go after the entire masses of the country. So I think technology would be, my sense, a major enabler in driving that.
I completely agree with you, and I think there is a big push of making at least healthcare and education both accessible and affordable,
Yes.
so that the bottom of the pyramid can, get the benefit of.
So I'll give you another example here. Need not be the bottommost, but today IT industry employs 5.3 million engineers, which is, and each is a high-paying job. Each person in turn employs 3 to 4 additional people in the society. If you take a family of 4, it is equivalent to our industry supporting twice the population of UK. Now, within this 5.3 million, we have 37% women. Now, how did these women get the job? They knew the subject, they appeared for the test, and they got it. So that meritocracy has been brought in, as the seeds of meritocracy has been planted by our industry. Now, if you look at these women who are having a high-paying job, now they have high disposable income. So what kind of freedom now they will enjoy at home, how they'll bring up their children, how they'll contribute in the society, how they'll contribute in the communities and the job and work environment. There is a silent revolution taking place. And it will again have its own ripple effect. So the well-being will come because this particular industry so far has democratized opportunities. Democratized, you can say, wealth creation. So that's indirect way of supporting it.
Fabulous. I completely agree with you. And before we go to the audience for questions, my last question for you is: what made you write The Maverick Effect? What was the motivation behind writing this?
Long answer.
we have a lot of patience, so we are ready to hear you. Yeah, please.
I personally, again, strongly believe that fortunes of billion people change thanks to the IT industry. But I'm going one step further. I believe that IT industry change thanks to NASSCOM.
Yes.
If I ask any one of you, you are using smartphone, you are using internet, have you ever thought of saying thank you to NASSCOM? None of you would have. Why? And I believe very strongly it is NASSCOM as an institute, the values it followed, the processes it followed, is what has made that difference to the IT industry. Like I give you an example of building trust with the policymakers. In the process, we ended up with Mr. Vittal creating STPI scheme. Now, STPI scheme, if you go deep, it created level playing field in the country. NASSCOM wrote draft policies of 20 states, IT policies of 20 states. So when, let's say, Java wave came, we had 25 universities ready with Java people, which would not have been possible for us to take advantage of the scale if we didn't have the resources. So, or let's say I give an example of GCC, how R&D centers were allowed to take birth, or how business process outsourcing was allowed to take birth. Competing with the best, having confidence we can compete with the best, not stopping competition to come in, all that. So all those factors were, I believe very strongly, the way the NASSCOM evolved and it followed. And so that's the model or the secret sauce of NASSCOM I wanted to bring out to the public. And if you ask, since none of you know about NASSCOM, there's also an African proverb which says, if the lions had historians, the stories of hunting would not have glorified the hunter.
Oh.
So if NASSCOM story is not told, you're not going to praise it. So I'm hoping that with this book, I've taken the model out and it will become, I don't want to use the word popular, but it becomes a very serious model for every association, not only in the country, but globally, to follow that model. Today we have ISB, SP Jain, IIMs started doing case study on the NASSCOM and developing the framework under which NASSCOM has come up. So we are hoping that once those case studies are out, they'll become a sort of a role model for others to follow. So that's the objective behind the Maverick. And then beyond that, also one more point was the name Maverick effect, if that's what you were referring to. Maverick thinks differently as an individual, not bribing, working with your competitors. All that is a very different mindset. So that is the individuals of the industry. But working together in a collaborative manner, keeping India first, letting your best energy come out and solve a problem, that's the Maverick effect, or NASSCOM effect is what I call it. So that's the reason I wrote that book. Hopefully, each one of you should read this book whenever you get an opportunity, give your comments. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Please then promote the model. It's nothing to do with NASSCOM. It is more to do with the way a non-profit should work together.
The mindset, probably.
Sorry?
The mindset also.
That's right. Yeah. It's a mindset. It's all mindset, yes.
Great. No, I think it's a fabulous conversation, Mr. Mehta.
in a